Little children, this is Jesus talking to the apostles. Little children, I am with you a little while longer. You will seek me, and as I said to the Jews, where I am going, you cannot come. So now I say to you, a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, as I have loved you, that you also love one another. So in a little while he's going to go away. This is what he's confronting them with. And they've been with him 3 years and more. Actually, when it says, where I am going, you cannot come, it might be better translated, are not able to come. They can't follow him. And this distresses Peter, who wants to go with him wherever he goes, whatever it costs, even laying down his life. He wants to go with Jesus. My little children. The phrase little children is used by Jesus here. And also, when he's talking about the kingdom of heaven and entering the kingdom of heaven, he says to them, to the people listening, except you are converted and become like little children, you will not enter into the kingdom of heaven. So to enter into the kingdom of heaven requires humility that little children have. The humility of little children, not the childishness, the humility. And also in Matthew 19, verse 13, little children were brought to Jesus, and this had upset his disciples. It seemed to be disrupting. They wanted him to the parents wanted him to lay their hands on the children and to give thanks for them. The disciples rebuked them. And in verse 14 it said, but Jesus said, allow little children to come to me and don't forbid them, because the kingdom of heaven consists of such. So we are like little children if we are in the kingdom of heaven. If we're not like little children in this respect, we're certainly in the wrong place. If we're not in if we're in the kingdom of heaven. The Apostle Paul uses the phrase little children. In fact, whereas Jesus doesn't say my little children, Paul does. And Paul's not as old as Jesus. And so the men he's talking to are closer to his age, the men and women he's talking to. In Galatians 4, verse 19, he says, my little children. There's affection here, concern for them, of whom I travail in birth again, until Christ be formed in you. That's his anxiety. Anxiety that Christ should be formed in us as well. A similar phrase is used by the Apostle John in his first letter, my little children, and he also sometimes just says little children. In 1 John chapter 2, he says, my little children. And John's the youngest, apparently, of them all. The one that Jesus took under his care because of his brashness as a youngster, a son of thunder, but also became the apostle of love to whom he could confidently put his mother in the care of. My little children, these things I write to you, that you don't sin. If any man sins, we do have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ, the righteous. And so he introduces us to Jesus' work of advocacy when we sin with the Father. his advocacy with the Father. In chapter 3, he says, "My little children, let us not love in word, neither in tongue, but in deed and in truth." We might do good things. We might strive to do things correctly, but it is not done in love. It's like a banging, clanging cymbal, worthless spiritually. It must be love that motivates. And so in loving compassion, he says, "My little children, let us love in truth. Let us not in deed and in truth." In several other places, he uses these phrases, and they are phrases of somebody who's mature to those who he feels to some degree are less mature, but he has a deep concern for, compassion for. And so we have Jesus using it to the 11 disciples, the 11 apostles. Where's the other one? Poignantly, he says, "Little children." This is in John chapter 13, verse 33. "Little children, I am with you for just a very brief time. You will seek me. And as I said to the Jews, where I go, you're not able to come. So now I am telling you, I am giving you another instruction, that you love each other as I love you." That's Jesus. He wants us to love as he loves us. They would need that love for each other. Judas Iscariot had left. He was beyond it. Satan had already entered into his heart. And there were those left who would have to face what was going to happen the rest of that 24-hour day. Because this is in the evening when the day began, and before the next evening of what to us would be the following day, but to them is the same day, he would be on the cross before the evening came. They would need this compassion and love for each other. "Little children, I'm with you for a very brief time. You will seek me. And as I said to the Jews, where I go, you're not able to come." Where was he going then? We know he was going to the cross, but where was he going? So now I'm telling you, I'm giving you another instruction, that you love each other as I love you. That was Jesus' compassion for them as though they were within his arms as like little children, as though he was a caring senior. And he was senior to all of them in this life, but he was more senior than that. In chapter 13 of John's Gospel, verse 1, it said, "Now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour was come," this is it, within the 24 hours, "that he should depart out of this world." And where's he going? "To the Father." And they couldn't come with him. They weren't able to. But this wasn't done without first of all and foremost, having loved his own. Having loved his own which were in the world, he loved them. He loved those 12. He loved those 11 that were with him at this time he's talking to them. He loved them, it says, to the end. He loved these little children, the apostles, to the end. So he asks them in verse 14 not to let their heart be troubled. They put their trust into God. They should put their trust into him. Trust him. He was leaving them. He'd be on the cross. He looked a complete failure to the world, and they were panicking. They were to put their trust into him in the next few hours, particularly. Then he talks of his Father's house, because he's looking beyond the cross and what the cross is all about and what it will bring. In my Father's house are many dwelling places. And the next bit. If it wasn't so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. That's why he was going to the Father, to prepare a place. And seeing I'm going to prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself. So as they're in the upper room panicking because they might be arrested and Jesus is going through what he did and dies on the cross, and oh, what's going to happen? I will come again and receive you to myself. That's where we want to be, isn't it? With him. That where I am, you may be also. So where Jesus is, we can be with him. And that's what it's all about, that we might be with him. Simon Peter responded, Lord, where are you going? Jesus answered him, where I am going, you cannot follow me now, just now, but you will follow me afterward. I wonder if that was going through, or could go through their minds as he was suffering on the cross and when they were hiding in the upper room. You will follow me afterwards, when it's all over. In Luke 23:43, Jesus told him, I am saying to you, and who's he talking to? Definitely, today you will be with me in paradise. Paradise was a garden. It illustrates the paradise that Jesus was going to the Father to prepare for them. And this man on the cross, he tells him, this thief, you will definitely be with me in paradise. Now, I'm going to disclose those of you that are old like me. And the question is, that must confront us many times if we don't know Jesus. Does existence have meaning? What's it all about? Does life have meaning? Alfie, what's it all about? What is this thing called love? Who of you remember that? A song of two people loving each other, but they're puzzled about deeper things. What is this thing called love. John, writing in his first epistle, chapter 4, verse 8, says, "He who doesn't love doesn't know God, for God is love." That sums up God. So where's all the love while all that commotion is going on, and while all this commotion is going on? God is love. Make no mistake. In this was revealed the love of God towards us, goes on John. Oh, how was it revealed? Because of this, God sent his only begotten Son into the world, his well-beloved Son he sent to go through all that, so that we might live through him. That's why God sent Jesus to the cross, that we might live through him. And all that Jesus did. Existence, life, what's it all about? The universe, what's it all about? The reason for existence, why we exist, why am I here, demands an answer. One answer given is by a scientist, supposed to be. At Cambridge, was he, or Oxford, I can't remember which. But a leading scientist tells us nothing exploded. And that's science. Nothing exploded. Some say, oh, it means everything shrinks to or shrank to being infinitesimally small and then exploded out again. Infinitesimally small means nothing. So trying to say it that way doesn't explain it. The same man tells us that everything is blind, pitiless chance. This is not an answer as to why there is existence, the reason for existence. Existence, creation, the creation of the universe from its first formation to its final extinction has a reason. And it's like a seesaw from the beginning to end. There's a fulcrum, a turning point. And in the whole of existence from beginning to end, from the creation of man to the final extinction of mankind on earth, has a fulcrum. And that fulcrum is the reason for its existence. So whilst we're thinking of a new year, a time to put behind us the past and give thanks for it, and start a new year with wishing things for it, let's remember that this fulcrum is the time when all that's before it, that led up to it, was completed at that point and started everything that follows on from that fulcrum. In Hebrews chapter 1, verse 2, that God has in these last days, the last days began with the cross, and they finish with the annihilation of the universe and the day of judgment, has in these last days spoken unto us by his Son, whom he has appointed heir of all things, by whom also he made the world. And then in verse 9 of chapter 2, he made the world by him. But we see Jesus, who was little lower than the angels, for the suffering of death, that's the fulcrum, crowned with glory and honour. That's a strange fulcrum, glory and honour, death, that he, by God's favour, Jesus, might taste death for everyone. He tasted death for you and for me. For it is appropriate for him for whom are all things. That's why they all exist. And by whom are all things. That's how they all came into being. In bringing many sons and daughters into glory, to make the captain of their salvation perfect through sufferings, made perfect at the cross, yet born of a woman, just like us, being born of a woman, he grew in wisdom and stature, came into this world for the purpose of that suffering, and developed wisdom and grew bigger and stronger. Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government is, I'm saying, is now upon his shoulder. He's our government. And his name is still called Wonderful Counselor. Where do we go for advice? The mighty God, the everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace, born to us. Little children, he's our everlasting Father. Jesus is our everlasting Father. So when he says little children, we have words of maturity, somebody who's senior to her by years, long ages going back far beyond the baby born in Bethlehem to Mary. Full of compassion from the many ages is in existence, which is eternal. John 8:57, the Jews said to Jesus, "You're not yet 50 years old, and have you seen Abraham?" Yes, he'd seen Abraham. He went back far beyond Abraham, far beyond the beginning of the universe. Jesus said to them, "Definitely, I am telling you definitely, before Abraham was, I am." God said to Moses, "This is my name throughout your generations." In Matthew 28, we learn that we're baptized into the name, one name. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit have one name. I am was in the garden, the paradise that Adam and Eve had. And the call came, "Adam, where are you?" What had Adam done? What had Satan done talking to his wife? Genesis 3:15, speaking to Satan, I will put enmity between you and the woman. Who is the woman? Mary, who bore Jesus. And between you, your seed, between your seed, the offspring of Satan, and her seed, Jesus. Enmity between those who are the offspring of Satan and those who are the offspring of her seed, Jesus. He will bruise your head, Satan. He's going to bruise Satan's head. The death on the cross was a bruising of Satan's head, not a failure. And you will bruise his heel. Jesus would suffer, but Satan would lose. Satan is defeated. He will bruise your head. Say, Jesus is glorified. Satan is defeated at the fulcrum. Jesus is glorified at the fulcrum. John 17:24. Father, I will that they also, the disciples, whom you have given to me, will be with me where I am, that they might behold my glory in heaven, which you have given me, for you loved me before the foundation of the world. Jesus didn't come into being at the foundation of the world. He was before. Paul writes to the Hebrews, chapter 2, verse 9, but we see Jesus. The suffering of death crowned with glory. He was glorified on the cross. With glory and honor, he was honorable on the cross, that he might, by God's favor, that he might taste of death for everyone, you and me. Back to the upper room. When Judas had gone out, John 13:31, therefore, when he had gone out, so they left on their own without Judas, Jesus said, this is when he said it, now is the Son of Man glorified, and God is glorified in him. Judas has set the ball rolling to the crucifixion and death of Jesus. And he says, now is the Son of Man glorified, and God is glorified in him. What a God to send his Son for that purpose. If God is glorified with him, how great a God he is in how he glorified with Jesus. God will also glorify him in himself, and will glorify him immediately. On the cross, when he was glorified, it was immediately apparent, straight away apparent, that Jesus was glorified. It might not look like glory to be in agony on the cross and the blood pouring down, striving for breath, discussing things with somebody else, a thief, on the cross. But this thief said to him, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Did it look as though Jesus was going to be king over a kingdom at that moment in time? But it says he was glorified. And this thief saw his glory. Remember me. It was apparent straight away. Remember me when you come into your kingdom. The death on the cross was glory. The centurion and those who were with him, those who were guarding Jesus, when they saw the earthquake and the things that had happened, were fearing greatly and saying, not just the centurion, the soldiers who were guarding him. Think of that. This was the Son of God. Matthew chapter 27, verse 54. So is this the reason why Jesus came into the world? In John chapter 12, verse 27, he says, now is my soul troubled. It wasn't many hours hence. And what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour. But for this cause I came to this hour. That's the reason, the basic, main, prime reason he came to that hour. He who loves his life will lose it, but he who hates his life, he put his back on his life and died. In this world, what do you think of your life in this world? Are you striving for something more prosperous and better and nicer and comfortable? He who hates his life in this world will keep it into eternal life. If any man serves me, says Jesus, he must follow me, go the way he went. Then, and only then, where I am, my servant will be there. If any man serves me, my Father will honor him. But where he is, if we love him and hate this life, we will be there with him. So we, his servants, will be there, every one of you. Forget the virus for a minute. Every one of you faithful children of God, we will be there with him. To the Thessalonians, chapter 1, verse 4, verse 14. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so God will bring with him those who sleep in Jesus. And then further down in verse 18, and thus we shall always be with the Lord. It's never going to be disrupted. There are going to be no disruptions of any kind. And so Paul's advice is, therefore, comfort one another. Comfort each other, come on, with these words. John says, now is the judgment of this world. Now the prince of this world will be cast out. This is about Jesus at Calvary. And Jesus is saying, at that point is the judgment of the world. That point is judging everything, past and future, to do with the whole world, to do with you and me. That point, how do we take it? Now the prince of this world will be cast out. And he's cast out of us because of that. the cross. If I am lifted up from the earth, I will draw all men to me. He said this signifying what death he should die. If I am lifted up. We have to lift him up. That's our job now. We benefited from him being lifted up, and we are benefiting from him being lifted up. Now it's us to tell others, this is Jesus, and this is why he was lifted up. The Ethiopian eunuch, reading Isaiah 53, that is a lamb to the slaughter and a sheep before a shearers is dumb, so he opened not his mouth. Is he talking of himself or of some other man? And so Philip explained it was Jesus. And he said, what hinders me from being baptized? If there's anybody here listening to us now and is coming to love Jesus more and more, as we should be too, and desires to be with Jesus eternally, there's only one condition required of a person who believes and is repentant when he hears about Jesus being lifted up. There's only one condition. What is to stop me from being baptized? He asks. If you believe with all your heart, says Philip. That's the only condition. Having repented, seeing Jesus lifted up, we must believe with all our heart, and then there's nothing to stop us from being baptized. As the eunuch said, here's water, what's to stop me? He probably asked the question because he wasn't fully accepted in Jewish society. He was a eunuch. He'd been castrated, and so he wasn't a full man. But he was in God's eyes. If you believe in your heart, with all your heart you may, I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. Then Christ should live in us and will live in you. And we are then to lift him up before others that they may also have that experience. Paul, I've mentioned it many times, and it means so much to me. At the end of chapter 20, he says, I am crucified with Christ. Are you prepared to be nailed with Christ to him? Nevertheless, I live. That's self done away with, but I'm living. Yet not I. Oh, there's no praise to me for that. But Christ lives in me. So there's a different reason for living, and living that reason. The life which I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God. He died for me, who loved me and gave himself for me. He gave himself for you. He gave himself for me. He was having a problem with the Galatians, and in chapter 3, he points out to them what they had learned. He said as though he had actually seen it yourself, and he's no doubt referring to when he himself preached to the Galatians. Who is bewitching you that you should not obey the truth? If you've not obeyed the truth, who is bewitching you? Is it scientists, so-called? Or is it the world around you? Who's bewitching you that you should not obey the truth? Before whose eyes Jesus Christ has evidently been set forth, crucified in your midst. Read it yourself. I'm reinterpreting it according to the original, as though they were actually there. Paul explained it in such a way as though they were actually there, seeing him crucified in a way that could not be denied. For you're all the children of God, he says in verse 26, by faith in Christ Jesus. How? For as many of you as have been immersed, that's what baptism means, into Christ, that's what it says in the Greek, have put on Christ. All of us that believed in Jesus with the whole of our hearts and were immersed and raised from the water because of our faith in him, have put on Christ. If you've not put on Christ, then who's bewitched you? What's stopping you?